Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion's April monthly town hall. We are so thankful and happy that you decided to join us for this hour. We've got some great things in store for you. Our theme today is celebrating the dimensions of diversity. And so, Coleman, next slide, please. So what do we have in store for you today? Today's agenda is we're going to have you view a video called The Look. You're going to be engaging in some interactive polls. We're going to really take a deep dive into the different dimensions of diversity. And of course, we'll do our closing where we tell you how you can keep in touch. So to do so, you can go directly to our Twitter page, our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, as well as our YouTube page. And all the information is there. For our Twitter, it's at DDEI Monroe. For our Facebook, it's Monroe County Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. For our LinkedIn page, that's also Monroe County Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And our YouTube channel is Monroe County, New York /Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And as we're on today, I just want to give you guys just some friendly reminders about moving forward. If you need or if you know of someone that will be joining our town hall sessions that is in need of an ASL interpreter, please reach out to us at mcdei@monroecounty.gov. Say it with an email. We have our culture committee that is growing and continually giving the D&I department ways that we can be inclusive, build programming. And if you want to be a part of that committee where you help to not only share ideas, but also contribute to the planning and the action items, we meet every first Wednesday of the month. You can reach out to Ebony Burgess to inform her of your interest in participating. And of course, you are absolutely welcome. The D&I website updates are also available on our intranet. We have also added a D&I toolkit on the intranet for you to access various related learning tools and resources that help you ensure that you are engaging in diverse, inclusive, and equitable practices, not only with your teams and your staff, but also with our constituents as well. The diversity action plan implementation is still going on. If your department has not completed that, please be sure to get that into Coleman Faison and Dr. D. Kimbrell as soon as possible. We've also started the Emerging Diverse Leaders Program. We ask your departmental D&I leader, and these all can be found on the intranet to help you access that information and also gain information about what the program is, how it seeks to encourage and support you in your day-to-day work and in your D&I growth. Next month is Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. That's a mouthful. I'm going to say it again. Next month, the month of May, is Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. So look out for content on our social sites. Of course, Coleman will be sending you out those D&I weekly notices that gives you information on what's happening, not only locally, but nationally, so that you can engage in celebrating some of these events as well.
Right, thank you so much, Cheryl. We want to get started with a video called The Look, just to get our discussion started today. Thank you so much for playing that video. And it really leads us into our conversation today as it relates to the different dimensions of diversity and how they show up on us and how that in turn can impact the way that people see us, the way that people treat us. That really showed us the experience of it all. So like Cheryl said, we want to make today an interactive experience, allowing you to kind of share your thoughts and share your experiences. So we have a few polls that we've put in place just to kind of get your thoughts and kind of get the conversation going. So the first question we want to ask you all is, why is diversity important to you? Okay, great. So we have most everyone participates, so thank you so much. And why is diversity important? Some of the answers we had was to increase representation of different backgrounds, make room for innovation and diverse perspectives, makes the working environment more productive, all of the above and none of the above. And we actually had 100% at all of the above. And you guys are absolutely right. It's very important that we consider the diversities within our work environment, just because it makes us better, right? It makes us a more healthier work environment, as well as allows us to be more productive. So thank you for that. And again, if questions are coming up during, you don't have to wait to the end. Go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll also incorporate those in the discussion. All right, so when we talk a little bit about our department, and I don't know if we have before, but I just wanted to go over why we are here. And why we are here is really to make sure that we are uplifting diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are celebrating the differences. We are making sure that equity is intangible and it is a place where people feel included. So the mission of our department is, Monroe County's DEI department is committed to influencing a culture that is accessible and fair to all through its systems, processes, and services. Our vision: to foster a culture that embraces and values diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout our workforce and community. And these are a few of the values that we decided to stand our department on, and that is to promote respect. Each person's differences are treated with a humanistic approach. We promote empathy, showing compassion and acting without judgment towards all. We promote courage, empowering all employees to use their authentic voice to influence change. We promote curiosity, providing opportunities for continuous learning and cultural awareness. And we promote accountability, influencing transparency and trust in all processes, procedures, and decision-making. So that's what we are standing on as an organization, and really making sure that all departments are intentional in the way that we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So some key areas of focus, as you guys know, we are here to bring awareness to differences, to educate the organization, to make sure that we are looking at our systems and ensuring there is equity there. But these are some of the areas that have been set forth by legislation and things that are kind of new to the county. So our diversity action plan is something that each department is working to develop and implement based on the uniquenesses of that department. Each department should have a departmental DEI leader. So that is really the person that is acting as the catalyst in your department to ensure that things around DEI are happening. And they're working with us as well to make sure that these things are happening, and that they are becoming a part of what is done in the departments. Some departments do have committees that you can join to add feedback and participate in different events and things of that sort. So that is something that you may want to connect with your department on if you haven't already. Another thing that is new to the county that is coming out of DEI is our MWBE certification and utilization program. And we really have opened that up as a local certification program. There is already a New York State certification program, but what this does is allow more opportunity for women and minority businesses to work with the county through government contracting. And it expands beyond just construction, which was done historically, to all services. So it is something that we are being intentional around in regards to working with the community and helping to build that wealth in our community. And another is language access and ensuring that all departments have the tools and resources in order to provide access to those that are limited English proficient. And this is going to look a little bit different for all departments. Some departments are public facing while others are not. So whether it is a community member or it is an employee or a visitor or what have you, that we have the services already in place so that we are ensuring that access and equity there as well. Before I move on, I just want to open up the chat to see if there are any questions or thoughts around the department, some of the key things that we are doing, how do we get there? We also have Cheryl, our EEO manager, that has been working to kind of develop our policies and make sure people are informed around that. Also, Ebony Burgess is doing the same around our ADA. So those are things that are already here at the county, but we want to make sure that that you guys are aware of them and those policies make sense. Someone said they had to look up what MW. Oh, I'm so sorry. So that's our talk. Thank you for pointing that out. That is our talk. So we have gotten so used to it, but minority and women-owned businesses and enterprises is what MWBE means. Actually, this week, our MWBE manager launched the first annual training event. So that really is an opportunity for vendors, our departments to connect with our community around opportunities. Okay. Yeah, so people that own businesses that are, they may be an entrepreneur and they may have a business and they want to provide services to the county. So maybe it can be for janitorial services, maybe security. So there's several different things that the county buys and they contract out to buy those things. So people can apply through our certification process to be considered for those services, goods, or what have you. Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Mandy. Great questions. Any other questions before we move on or thoughts? All right, very good. Oh, can you talk more about utilization goals? Do those figures mean that the goal is to have? So what the utilization goals mean is that whoever is awarded a contract, or in order for an organization to be awarded a contract, when it is over $20,000, they have to make sure that they are including minorities at 12% into that, minority-owned businesses, and for women businesses, 3%. So meaning that they will have to subcontract at least 12% of whatever business they get from us to an MWBE and 3% to a women-owned business. When it is under 3,000, then departments have a little more leeway to select who they will use for contracting, but each department is also being intentional around using our MWBE list to select for those projects as well. Okay, very welcome, Gabriella. All right, very good, great questions, everyone. Okay, So let's keep it going. So the next thing is, why do we even have to focus on DEI at work? Why do you guys think it is a topic of discussion, of focus, of strategy? Okay, and the poll should be coming right up for that. Okay, there it is. So why do we focus on DEI at work? All right, very good. So again, you guys are great at this, 100% to dismantle a system of inequity. Absolutely. When we think about why we do this work, we have to think about the way that our country was built and how. So there were certain structures put into place where everyone didn't have the same opportunities. And now here we are today, starting to address, bring awareness to these things and starting to dismantle the impact of these things in our society. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we have our historical context. When we think about things around the civil rights movement and the feminist movement, we know that women and people of color have not always had the same rights as everyone else, and also people of the LGBT community. So with that, we are fighting to dismantle not only the law, but the mindsets that are attached to that when things have been perpetuated, so long. How do we value people that are different in our society and bringing awareness to that? A lot of times these things are done subconsciously, so we may not always be aware because it has become the norm. So we start to be intentional and create systems where these things are not impacting people and limiting access to opportunity. In our modern interactions, we see lots and almost all companies with a focus on DEI in the workplace. You may see it at your schools, at your kids' schools, in the businesses that you guys frequent. So people are now having a social awakening as it relates to DEI and making sure that it starts to be at the forefront of the things that we do. We see people having more willingness to be aware of the differences in power and privilege and what that means in our society. We see people advocating for things like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Stop Asian Hate, and really addressing some of the isms in our society, racism, sexism, ableism, and those different things. So we really start to see this being a focus in our society where before a lot of times these things went unsaid, especially in the workplace. Okay, any thoughts or questions here? Okay, and if anything comes up, go ahead and put it in the chat. Next slide. All right, so what does equity mean to you? I found equity to always be one of those things that it can be ambiguous, right? It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it can depend on your experience. So I want to take this opportunity to get an idea of equity and when you hear that word, what does it mean to you? Okay, we'll take a couple of more seconds. Okay, so let's see what people said. Oh, we really had a half and half split. So what does equity mean to you in the workplace? Half of you said fairness is giving everyone the same thing. So equity can be seen as fairness and giving everyone the same thing. And then half of you said giving people what they feel they need to be successful. Very, very interesting. And I think that that is, a common thing that we will see, or that I have seen when we talk about equity. What does it mean? And it means to be fair. And oftentimes people say it means giving everybody the same thing. And traditionally, absolutely, that is what fairness means. But through the lens of equity, we want to make sure that we are giving people what they need to thrive. And we know that everybody is going to need something different to thrive in the workplace, in society, or whatever it is that they're doing. So being aware of those differences and what those differences are will allow us to be more equitable. So it really is focusing on the individual and providing the tools and resources that will allow them to gain that access and opportunity to success. Okay. Any thoughts here before we move on around equity? Okay, good. So just talking a little bit more about equity here in this diagram, you guys can see inequity. I mean, that's clear to see. Some people have access, some people don't. When we start to think about equality, and I think that's more along the lines of traditional fairness, is being equal, giving everybody the same thing. But we can still see when things are equal, it is still not the same, right? People don't have access. And we see here in our diagram that these two folks have equal ladders. The size of the ladder is equal, but it still doesn't gain access to opportunity. So when we go down and we look at equity, we see that the ladders are a different size now, right? So that starts to allow for a little more access, but still not the same access. And as we evolve into justice, we start to change the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is the tree, right? So we start to fix for the tree in order to gain access and opportunity for everyone. And I think that's where we are in our society. We're starting to realize the equity piece. So what are the tools that people need to gain more access? And then we are starting to dig a little bit deeper down into the overall root of what some of the issues are and fixing those. And those are our systems in our society in order to add real equity, real access, and real opportunity for everybody. All right, very good. Moving right along. Social identity. Social identity is a big thing when we talk about DE&I because it is really how a person is showing up in our society and what that means to society. In that video, The Look, we seen the way that the Black man was showing up and the treatment that he was getting based on that social identity. But we also saw the flip side of that when he came into the courtroom as a judge, and then the way that people started to interact and look at him. It was totally different because those different things mean something different in our society. And oftentimes we don't realize our social identity until we've been in school, or we've been out in society, and then society starts to tell us what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be someone who's limited English proficient, what it means to be of the LGBTQ community. These are the things that society tells us, and they kind of place us into those boxes based on that. Okay, so the next poll that we have is, when did you discover your social identity? And it really is those aha moments. For myself, I would say that, they happen all the time, but the earliest point that I could remember is definitely in my childhood, early on in elementary school, really becoming aware of those things and what they meant in our society, of being a person of color, of being a woman, living in an urban area and different things like that. All right, very good, very good. So we're gonna go ahead and end that poll. Share those results. All right, so we had 19% of you say as a working professional, 63% say in childhood, and 6% none of the above, and 13% other. Now, would anybody be willing to share their experience or, kind of put it in the chat? I know I know we can't hear you, but if anybody is willing to share an experience or share anything as it relates to that, we would really love for you to put it in the chat, and I can definitely communicate that or speak to it in a group, or if there's any questions around that. Okay, so it really is those aha moments. Okay, Gabriella, thank you. A white child about 4 or 5 said she didn't want to touch me because I was dirty. She never seen brown skin before. Aha moment, Gabriella. Yeah, aha moment. And the thing about these moments is that they start to shape our experiences and they stick with us through, as we become adults, as we get into the workplace, and, they stick with us. So, and they attribute to our experiences and the interactions that we have. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, anything else you guys would share? And people on the DEI team, don't feel shy. If you guys want to chime in on anything, always feel free to share your experiences. But I can definitely resonate with Gabriella. I've had those experiences, and it was early on in my childhood as well that I started to understand what it meant in our society. All right, very good. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. All right, dimensions of diversity. So when we talk about diversity, oftentimes people are thinking, oh, it just means, you're a person of color, or it just means you're a woman. But there are so many differences as it relates to diversity, and there's no one who is excluded. When we think about all the dimensions of diversity, we all can connect with being diverse in some level of another. When we think about our social identity, oftentimes it is attributed to that will in the middle there. So people are looking at things that show up on us: our gender, our race, sexual orientation, sometime our age, our physical abilities and disabilities. Those are the things that people can see on us, and then therefore they're making decisions about us or what have you. But there's so much more to make us who we are, and these are the things that connect us. That inner will are really the things that kind of divide us, but we are more connected than we know when we think about the things on that outer will. So we think about our family life, our military experience, our jobs, our education, our work background, and different things like that. Those are the things that really have the opportunity to connect us, but it's really hard for us to see those things because we are focusing a lot on that exterior, right? So when people are making decisions about who's the best for the job, or who's the most safe, or who's the most valuable, or who's the less risky, those different things or what have you, it is really based on our social identity. And that's why DEI is so important, because it is getting people to think beyond the things that we can see, right? And get beyond some of these things. But although it's a win-win situation for all of us, these things do come with barriers. So it's not that easy just to say respect people for who they are, or, we do have barriers to some of these things. All right, so one of the barriers is racism, right? And a lot of times we are thinking about interpersonal things that we say to each other, and things of that nature, but it really goes beyond that. into our structures and our systems. So our institutional and our structural racism. So some of the practices and the way that we do things that really exclude people, that really create barriers in order for people to be successful. And I think in the work that we do here at the county, it's very important that we take that second look to really understand the way that the system is impacting people and bring awareness to that, whatever it may be. And it may be, a process, it may be a mandate, it may be something like that, that really is excluding a big group of people. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those. I mean, there's things that we can do on the individual level and the way that we treat each other, but there's also things that we can do each and every day in our working environment. And it really is being aware of these things, and not only being aware, but how do we use our voice to start to speak on these things when we see these things. Okay. And guys, if anything is coming to mind, please feel free to add it to the chat. And the other thing is our own biases, right? And the thing about our biases is that they are natural. No matter who you are or where you come from, you are going to be biased. I don't care how woke you are or what have you. You will be biased against others. It is a human condition, and it is really a condition of the brain. So the brain, the way that we process information, we categorize it. And that's the same thing that we do when we see people, especially people that we're less familiar with. We start categorizing based on what we think we know, right? The brain can take in 11 million pieces of information per second. So the brain is dynamic in that way. It is very powerful where it can take in that amount of information per second. But in order to consciously process that information, it can only do 40 pieces of information per second. So that means that we have millions of pieces of information that go into our unconscious brain. And in our unconscious brain, we are making those gut decisions, and we are categorizing people, and we are making judgment about people that we are less familiar with. And those are our gut decisions that get in our way. Now, the thing with biases is that they can be good in certain situations. They can keep us from harm and different things like that. But when we are making decisions about people, especially decisions that can adversely affect someone's life, it is very important that we consider where this information is coming from. Can it be a bias that we have? Can it be coming from a gut decision? Or, so we really have to put those hard stops in when we are making decisions, especially in the work environment, because sometimes the work can become so automated, right? Once we know our job, we learn it and we do it, but sometimes we have to put that stop into place so that we are analyzing how we're making decisions and where the root of that decision comes from. Okay, any thoughts here before we move on? All right, great. So let's move on. All right, so how do we confront biases? So I would really love to hear what your thoughts are around confronting biases. And these may be things that you do, or you've seen work, or, if there's others, please share with us around some of the things that you do or that you have seen work. Okay, so some of the things we said was increase your awareness, learn more about your biases, all of the above, absolutely, none of the above. So 100% on all of the above and others. So, I mean, guys, if there's anything else, please put that in the chat. But again, really assessing the way that, you're doing your job, you're making decisions, speaking out when you see something. And I've seen that to be the hardest thing, right? So we have all seen inequities take place. And we've all seen, these things take place, and it's like, oh, don't look, almost like a train wreck, like don't look, but you can't stop looking. But, but how do we, in those moments, speak up and say something around those things. And I find that to be the hardest thing for people to do in the moment, is how do we bring awareness to these things in the moment? And I think that is the most fruitful time to bring awareness to these things. All right, so again, if anything comes up, feel free to put it in the chat. All right, so you too can affect change around DEI, whether it is at work, at home, and in other social settings. It is all of our jobs here at Monroe County Department of DEI. We are working to bring awareness to these things and really oversee the implementation of activities and practices around DEI, but it is really all of our jobs. When we think about our work environment and how we want it to be equitable and inclusive for everyone, we all have to do our part each and every day to make that happen. So what are some of the ways that we can do that? Okay, anti-racist. So a couple of months ago, we spoke with the group, and they gave us some information and some definitions around anti-racism. And when we say anti-racism, I think we can also add in there ableism, sexism. So anti-any ism that gets in the way of us seeing that inclusivity that we want to see each and every day, right? So the thing about being an anti-racist is not just being against it and not just practicing it for yourself, but being active in reducing and mitigating the impacts of racism, ageism, sexism, what have you, on individuals, especially in the working place, especially where we live. What are the things that we're doing? Are we using our voice? Are we using our power? Are we using our privilege? Everybody has a voice. Everybody has power. Everybody has privilege. So how are we using that to mitigate the impact of racism? Other than not engaging and not practicing it ourselves, what else are we doing? Okay. And if you guys have anything that you do in particular that you would like to share, please add that to the chat. All right, so action starts with you. As we said before, it is within all of our powers to implement change as it relates to DE&I in whatever we do, whether it is our work, whether it is our kids' school, whether it is with our clients or in the community or what have you. Action starts with you. Ally is really the first step. Being an ally, willing to offer your support, but it is even more powerful to be an accomplice. A lot of times people don't say things or they don't take action out of fear, right? So I don't want to be, seen as this person, or I don't know what the result may be if I stand up or if I'm vocal or if I advocate, but we can be much more impactful when people are active in their advocacy towards anti-racism and all of the isms. That's where we actually can start to see a change happen when people are speaking up against it. And when we are silent in it, we kind of become complacent in it, right? So we want to make sure that we are speaking up and we are being verbal. But, the first step is definitely being an ally, showing your support. The next step is definitely being an advocate that is vocal and active as well. And really starting to avoid some of the performative things. So things that really don't have an impact on, changing some of the mindsets, some of the systems that are attached to these biased things. Okay. Any thoughts here? All right, good. All right, so things that we need to know about DEI and biases. And the first thing is that diversity, equity, and inclusion, creating the systems and structures to make it something real in an organization, is everybody's job. It's everybody's issue. It's not just the people that are different, just not the people that are of color, the people that are disabled. It is everyone's job in the organization. No matter who you are biased, and that's fine. And that's something that we can start to mitigate. Remember, bias is not all bad. It's just when we are using bias to make decisions about people and when those decisions adversely affect people. Inclusion is a basic need. When we think about what we need as individuals to thrive, inclusion is a part of that. So when people don't have that, it can be trauma. Trauma can be perpetuated and create issues in the work environment. So it's not just a nice to have or something we want to do. It is something that people need in order to thrive. Our systems and our structures can be biased. So how do we start looking at those with an inclusive lens to make sure that we are adding equity to our system? And implicit bias can manifest anywhere, right? So think about those automatic decisions that we make, those automatic responses. How often do you have a gut decision about a person? I challenge you to understand where that gut decision came from. What is the root of that? Circumstances and structures can increase bias, decision-making, and decrease equity and inclusion. So sometimes there's a structure already in place, and that's the way that we've always done it, but that can also be the way that always perpetuates bias, right? So let's start challenging those things. Let's start advocating for those things and bringing awareness and speaking on those things. There's no way for us to change things if we are unwilling to communicate about it. Biased decisions can create legal risk. So that's where Cheryl gets involved when there are complaints around discrimination and harassment. So if we are not careful about how we're making decisions or interacting with each other, it can present a legal risk to the organization, and most importantly, a psychological safety risk to the individual. Awareness can lead to debiasing. So just as you guys said, the more that we learn, the more that we can start to reduce our own biases, the more that we can learn about ourselves and, the root of how we think and how we make decisions about people. Biased decisions perpetuate inequities for marginalized groups. So just as we've been talking about, the more that we are making biased decisions, the more that we are creating or we perpetuating the inequities when we talk about historically where they stem from in our society. Leaders can increase inclusion through system changes. Everybody has the opportunity and the voice to do that, and interventions and processes. So how can we change the way that we do things so that certain groups are excluded or certain people don't have access or opportunity? So, again, it is really up to each and every one of us. All right, so I want to open the floor up now to see if you guys have any questions, any thoughts, any comments around some of the things that we talked about today. And I'll also leave it open to people on the DEI team as well, if you guys want to add any thoughts or any input there. All right, so as always, we are here, if there's something that you guys want to take offline, always feel free to reach out to us. We will be providing an anonymous feedback form. So if you don't want to be connected to whatever questions that you may have, you can go through our website, our external website on Monroe County, and then just, provide us with the information. It does not take your email address, it doesn't take your IP or anything like that, but will allow you to anonymously communicate or ask for a follow-up or what have you, or you can just email us. But we do want to protect your privacy in these situations. If there's anything, any concern, or just anything you need any additional information or guidance on. So please feel free to reach out to us. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Coleman.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed our presentation today with our polls. Tried something a little bit different today. Well, obviously, we want to thank everybody from joining and signing on and the participation in the polls today. So today we're just going to close out, and as a reminder, we usually put our recordings up about a week or two later, so you'll be able to find us on our YouTube channel that Cheryl went over earlier in the presentation. And then it's posted there. The YouTube channel is the Monroe County, New York Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. If you search it there, you can see this town hall and all of our previous ones. As Dr. D stated, if you have any other questions or anything about that you want to discuss that was mentioned in today's discussion, be free to give us an email or email the Monroe County mcdei@monroecounty.gov email. Besides that, I'm going to close everything out today, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day.